as promised, joined now by the voice of the Orange, Matt Park. Happy New Year, Matt. How are you doing today?
Good, guys. How are you? Happy New Year.
We're doing great. Let's start with basketball. Obviously, tough loss coming off that Clemson game. We've been dissecting it for the last 90 minutes or so. What was the biggest issue, I guess, in that game from where you sat?
To me, just kind of a lack of urgency. Early second half in particular, I kind of found myself like, hey, when are they going to get going here? You go into the break down a point, which all things considered was about right. Donnie Freeman hadn't done anything to that point. It was not a great first half, probably for either team, and a defensive struggle at that point. It could have been worse, right? They were down big, down 10 in that opening half, or at least close to it. And to get back within a point and go, okay, you got another chance here. Come out with some fire to begin the second half and make a run at it. And I didn't really get a great sense there.
We had a caller ask us about Donnie not starting the game. What was your take on that? Because again, we look at it from the outside looking in like, well, if he's healthy enough to play, why is he not in the starting lineup? Was it a case of he was on a pitch count, for lack of a better term, and they were trying to save him for, bigger minutes in the second half? Or, did you have any reasoning for why he didn't start?
No, because we don't have the ability really to find that out once we don't. I know that on the day before it was sort of undecided, not because I specifically asked or heard about it, but I was told that they were working through that. I was a little surprised to see him not start. Just point blank for me, he would have started. I think the way that you tried to explain it, Steve, is the reason that you would not put him in the starting five, if to say, like, look, if he's only got 18 good minutes today, let's have the bulk of that be in the second half. And what Red said after the game was he played more than expected because that's what players do. They get out there and they break a sweat and they want to get going and keep going. And certainly Donnie, for starting as poorly as he did, wanted it to be better, and it was better. You'd love to have seen it, either one more shot go in or play another minute or two. Now, Coach Satlin, who knows the game inside and out, has forgotten more than we will know. He was in the camp of, oh, this is a really good play to bring him in off the bench. There's going to be a roar of the crowd and adrenaline rush and enthusiasm. Okay, maybe. I think I'd rather start the game with that than maybe in the next time out or something like that. Because there was a little bit of reaction, certainly, when he came in. But he came in and didn't play great. I just assumed maybe get that from the jump and maybe get it out of the way and get him going. He's the best player on the team by quite a margin. I would try to get as much out of him as possible.
Matt, what did you make about the timeout there at the end in the last play? Because that's come up a bunch from our callers.
I think they got a reasonable play at the end of the game. They got a three to tie it from a guy who can make threes. Is he their best shooter? No. But he was the hot hand in the second half. And Cayenne, I think the argument that he should have played more is probably apt, given that he is an innate scorer. But I didn't really sense it from anybody else. And that's what's part of the frustration, I think, here in recent years, is you probably sense Judah Mintz. You don't get the sense that there's any one alpha dog that's like, hey, I'm demanding the ball. I'm going to score when everybody knows it's coming through me and that kind of thing. So in late game situations, that seems to be a little lacking. But in terms of the quality of shot at the buzzer, I would be fine. I'm sure they slept fine related to that specific thing.
Syracuse is shooting less than 31% from three-point range. They're about halfway through the season. Can we look at this now and say three-point shooting is a problem? And what do you do about that? Nate King's only had 2 attempts from three-point range. Cayenne took 1 3. I know they don't rely on it, but I don't know. Paulie and I think we feel as though they need to be a little bit more dangerous from 3 to open things up. I mean, how do you do that right now if you're Red in this offense?
Yeah, they need to be better offensively, period, really, in every respect. Going back to the infamous comments, Red's asked about the offense, and he says the offense isn't a problem. What I think he means by that is the offense, meaning the playbook, the approach offensively is not the issue. And I think that can be true if the pieces operate the way that you expect them to, or the way that their track record suggests that they will. If you can spread the floor by guys making threes, if Donnie does his thing and all of that works the way it's supposed to, yeah, you can absolutely run the offense the way they're doing, which is spacing and reads. And that's, for as much criticism as that gets around here, that's in vogue all around the world. A lot of, at the very highest levels of basketball, spread the floor and let your playmakers work and put the defense in a tough spot. That's not a revolutionary or a controversial approach on the part of this coaching staff. But yeah, they got to make shots. I was just kind of looking earlier today, the teams that average about 6 3-pointers made, that's not a great neighborhood to live in. If you look down through there, yes, Arizona's in that category and a couple other decent teams, but there's not a lot of good teams that don't make threes. You've got to have something there. And just the proficiency, again, it doesn't have to be 40%, but if it can be 35, then you at least make the defense honor that, spread it. Now you put a player like a J.J. Starling, who's just not going to be a great shooter. He is a fantastic driver. You put him in position to succeed. So I think they'll work their way through that, get King some better shots, get Cayenne's confidence up in his better shots. He's a great driver too. So I think you'll see the offense more. If that was the first game with Donnie, for all intents and purposes, so they'll have to get better than they were on the last game out.
Matt, I had also brought up with the spacing. Do you think that William Kyle kind of hurts the spacing also because he's just not an offensive threat? He can't step out even 2 steps out of the lane and hit a jump shot?
Yeah, but I mean, you want him so much on the other end.
Yeah, the defense,
so,
right?
Again, yeah, I think that, another thing, it certainly gets the staff a lot of criticism is because this team has significantly improved over last year, there's the thought that these are all perfect, complete players, and that's just not the case. They all have some sort of limitation, so it's like a puzzle to kind of figure out how to work through it, right? J.J. Starling is a guy who can really drive and make things happen that way. He's not somebody you're going to rely on for a shot. William Kyle is superb at the defensive end. You can't really throw it into him with great expectations. Nate George does a lot of things right. He turns it over and takes questionable shots. Nate King's a very good defensive player, and on the offensive end, supposed to be a good 3-point shooter, but has been a little, for whatever reason, has not gotten the volume attempts there. So there's a lot to work through to try to put everybody in position to deliver their best. Cayenne, very good at one end of the floor, a little suspect on the other. So that's what they're really working through, and that's what you try to do in the preseason. And obviously you're now at the point where you don't have a lot of wiggle room.
Georgia Tech is next, and this is a really important stretch, obviously, for Syracuse to go on a little bit of a run with Georgia Tech, Pitt, Florida State, BC, the next 4 on the schedule. Georgia Tech obviously just gave Duke all it could handle a few days ago on Wednesday. What do you make of this Yellow Jacket squad as you prepare to do the game on Tuesday?
Well, it's a team that's got a lot of balance. We'll be watching their game tomorrow. They have another game still before Syracuse visits. And, they hung in there against Duke on the road. And save that, put a pin in that for your conversation when that comes up about winning at Duke, which Syracuse has done a couple times. I think Georgia Tech is something like since 2004 or some ridiculous number since they've won at Duke, and they're in the ACC and have been for a long time. So that, it's another thing where they brought in people. It looks like Stoudemire's brought in a guard in Lamar Washington from the West Coast that played for him there that, is a high assist player like Nathan George was for him last year. That's a big homecoming for George and Soiree on this trip. But there aren't going to be any real easy games, guys, in the ACC the whole year. Syracuse is better than last year, but they're not improved enough that they're going to walk in and dominate anybody. I mean, the Boston College game on the road is about one of the very few that I think you can maybe put in that category. And so I would expect that this one will be a game where Syracuse should be all right, but they're going to have to play well. Got to keep from beating themselves. I think that's what's so frustrating about the turnover count, because they've had a handful of exceptionally low turnover games. They turned it over twice against Kansas. They've had 4 games of 6 turnovers or fewer, and then they've had 5 games of 13 or more. I think there's just some head scratchers in there that can be cleaned up.
And something that might be good news for everybody, Steve and Matt, is that Georgia Tech somehow wins quad 1 games, but like under Damon Sotomayor, and then they've struggled against the lesser teams. They seem to play up to their competition. So that was just my little nugget.
Yeah. We shall see. Matt, as long as we got you, let's talk a little football. Day 1 of the transfer portal. We see, more than 24 names, in for Syracuse. 3 starters, and we talked about it with Jonte Cook and Daryl Gill, Yasin Willis. I guess you must be hearing the same thing, right? Fans are concerned, or, as Paulie said a moment ago, it's not a good look. What's your reaction to the names in the portal right now?
There's only 3 names in the portal.
Right. Yeah, right.
Stop. So it's just the nature of college football. And these 3 names of offensive starters, they've gone in, so it brings, it raises your eyebrow. I think one of the big parts of it is, everybody, I love the social media that counts. Number 24. Next one, #25, 3 exclamation points. Stop with that. Everybody's got people leaving. And I just don't know. What are we doing with all that? But what happens is it's a one-way exit ramp right now, because everybody's out on the portal, and now you're going to start to see the signings and things slowly trickle in. So, look, I trust in the head coach. I think the staff and their player acquisition has had a pretty good track record, and I think it really does come down to decisions. Is this person worth where you have them slotted budget-wise, and can you find somebody that replaces them? And where do you allocate your money? I think we're all in agreement that the money, whatever Syracuse has to be allocated toward offensive and defensive line. That those have got to improve for next season. You like the quarterback, you're going to work on backup quarterbacks, maybe plural. Yasin Willis, I think, is great, but I think his production can be replaced. And I'm not trying to diss guys that have left. I'd rather have him here than not, okay? But if he moves on, I think you can find somebody to do what he did or do more of what you're kind of looking for. Jonte Cook, that's kind of the poster child really for the modern era here. He's moving on, and I think he's got to really answer for the way his season turned down in the second half, and that can't be just quarterback related, So he moves on, and I think the coaching staff is pretty comfortable with where things are right now. I think they're excited about incoming players, and they're working on getting some more.
Matt, you mentioned that it happens to everybody. I think what to me is jarring is it's the side of the ball that struggled the most, and it's the names that you recognize on that side of the ball. And it seems like you're going to have to do a complete restart on your offense next year.
And the year after, Paulie. Well,
yeah.
not next year, but not for 27, because I think next year's team is going to be decent but young. And yes, people are going to leave. So next year at this time, if you want to just have this conversation a year ahead of time, we're going to be talking about people leaving off the 26 team, okay, that are not going to be on the 27 team. It's just the way it is. And you're trying to manage that all the time. I think everybody needs to start, and I'm not saying this is great, I'm just saying it's the way it is. You got to recalibrate. Do you lament that the Syracuse Crunch roster turns over a good deal of the year, from one year to the next, and the Syracuse Mets? It's developmental. It stinks for a fan in a lot of ways, but it's the way it is. I do think next year's team, because it's going to be recruited by Fran Brown and his staff, they're really excited about it. They feel good about retaining it. They're trying to acquire players that have multiple years of eligibility. So the idea is to retain the best of what you have every year, but it's just kind of the way it goes. Baseball, Paulie, you like baseball. In baseball, we talk about, wins above replacement and, where is a guy above the average? I just think if you look back at Houston Willis's numbers last year, how far were they above the average, right? Yeah. And Syracuse's running back production. I just think I don't want to tell tales out of school. I know that there was when I say there was a conversation between the head coach and the running back immediately after the season, I mean immediately after the season. And so I think they, they're on good terms here. It's not like he's leaving because he doesn't get along with the coach or anything like that. I just think decisions need to be made about who fits where and what can be done money-wise, and everybody's trying to do the best for themselves and for the program.
Yeah. Well said as always, Matt. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll chat again next week.
Okay, sounds good, guys.
All right. Voice of the Orange, Matt Park. We'll take our final timeout. We'll wrap things up